Okay, I thought I'd take a second and kind of show everybody what kind of what this application is I'm working on. Uh, so to kind of give everybody an idea of what this is, um, and kind of what I intended it to be. Basically, what this application is a series of libraries. There's 9 of them. These are custom DLL libraries that each do different functions, which I'll show you here in just a second. One of the functions of one of the libraries is to handle dealing with load orders. That's loading them, parsing them, importing them, exporting them. It's just basically load orders, and the same is for games. There's a networking library that allows you to connect uh, to a server. Anybody can run a server. I use it here, or its design was to be used here to share files between people that are in this house. Um, you can use it to network other people. If you're developing a project, you can network what you're doing, and they can easily access it. You can use it to push updates, software updates, just different things. You can use it to chat. Basically, what it is, it's a packet server, and what packets you choose to send depends on the application of the library. So you might choose to send text, and it becomes a text messaging system, or you might choose to send a file, or you might choose to send your load order, which you can then rebuild uh, on your you could rebuild it locally. So the whole one of the whole concepts behind this was to be able to share information, not necessarily files that you're not supposed to share, things like that, but it's to share information. So all the data that this application uses is exported. It uses an XML style format. It uses an HTML tag format. It's not necessarily HTML in a sense, but it does use the tags between the little angular brackets, and that includes everything. So any type of recording or any type of data or settings that the application uses is in that particular format. And there are functions built in to where you can import and export that data. So again, it's designed to share. The DLLs are they're independent. The design of the DLL was to be able to use the function calls from either a GUI interface like this, and I know this is not Windows Platform Foundation, where it uses the new kind of stuff. This is basically the older forms, but it won't take much, I don't believe, to convert it over to WPF. So I have to get it up and working before I can convert it over, but I'll release it long before that, and it'll be kind of like a little pet project to do, just to play around with. But the DLLs, there's 9 of them, and they're designed to work from either a command line interface or from a GUI. So in this case, one of the function calls to the, like for example, for the load order library was to load a load order. This is the current one I'm working on. This is not, even though this is live, it actually saves the data in a separate file along with all the information it needs to rebuild my game back from whatever mods I've chosen, whichever download files are involved, all of that. It'll even have any settings in it and things like that. That's yet to come, and that way a person's modded game can be shared, like as a whole. It isn't like, okay, I can download these files or I can click these buttons, but then it doesn't quite work. So it kind of makes it complete. And therefore, if you have a database, a local, let's say, file server, where you can put all of your files, um, You can literally create whatever load order you want. I can pipe it, let's say, to one of my friends comes over. I can pipe my load order to him, and then he literally can say, okay, what files do I need? I've got those, or I can get those off websites or wherever. Um, so anyways, so the whole and again, the design concept behind this is not necessarily that this is an interface, but that's what it is, and it deals with lists. I treat everything like it's a list. So this is a list. It's just a list of information. This is a list of information. These happen to be plugins, so these are considered files. These would be considered folders. If you look at the manifest, this again is just a list. This whole manifest is in XML format, so it's got tags, and it breaks the tags down into certain sections. But again, it's just a list. So anything you do to this application, like anything, like let's say I'm going to click on this to bring up a menu. This particular menu is not fixed in this application. This menu is defined in an external text file, which I'm going to get to in a second. And it's the same for this menu here. This menu is just how I've set it up. A lot of it's just to test the functions. So the way this works is there's a pipeline. There's basically a transaction pipeline. So if I go to click on this particular item, it doesn't the way normal form applications work is you will set up an event and you will capture this event for this application. That is not what this application does. It captures that event and puts it in a pipe. And then this application will read transactions from that pipe and then do whatever you're asking, to call the function. God, I don't know how to put this. So everything you do in this application is fed down a transaction pipe. So it's almost like a middleman. For example, this is a click. Normally that's a Windows event, but it's actually queued up, and then that pipe is serviced, and then the individual function calls are processed to give you the illusion that this particular item was clicked on and you have a menu. It's kind of complicated, but it's really, to me, the best way to do it. It can provide a little bit of it's kind of a little bit not clunky but bulky in a sense in the way that it does things, but it allows me to use a very common library to capture transactions in any application, not just this one. Like I say, this menu right here is completely configurable by the user, and that includes the icons, the text, what submenus you have, and just a lot of different things. Just to show you an example here, we're going to execute a script. Whenever the application fires up, it has some custom scripting. So to show you this, I'm going to fire off this startup script. And if you notice, it brought these windows up. Okay, these are functions. So this would be a function. So by requesting a function in that pipe, it then calls that function and then does whatever that function is supposed to do, be it a menu option or bringing up a window. It's same for this. If I click this button is tied. This button actually sends a function down the pipe, and the function says, I want you to show me load order history. You can change all of this. You can change colors of buttons, you can change backgrounds, titles, oh man, you can change all kinds of stuff. But you can still see that it's incomplete. So we'll go up to here where it says, I think we're looking for script extender. Now again, these menus are totally, these are just what I did to test them. This brings up the managed plugins. Now I consider these things reports. So any of these windows are basically reports. And reports can do certain things. They can act like a menu. So if I was to click on, let's say, Morrowind, I'm not going to do that just yet because, like I say, it's still a work in progress. And the data may not be correct. So if I click on, like, let's say Morrowind, it's going to act like a menu. It's still a list. It's basically a report that shows the available games. I changed some of the data, the configuration data. That's why the icons are not showing up. I've only done it for just a couple, because it is, it's a work in progress, and it does change from time to time. But by actually saying this list is a menu, I can then just simply click on it. It's the same as this, but not quite the same, because this is a form, where this is actually a list box. It's a custom list box. Everything's custom drawn. They all have custom paint routines. And you notice down here, this particular window's missing. So just to kind of just show you a little bit more. And I know I'm kind of all over the map, because it's really complicated and it covers a lot of things. By double clicking on this particular item, it launches two functions. One of the functions is to break the file apart and tell me, present me some data, and then basically show me the screenshot. Now, the function to do this is not specific to a Fallout 4 game save. It's actually defined by the user. You define the data. So these names up here, where it says file stream and player level, all that is what I defined it as in a text file. So when that function is complete, right now it's just basic to just get me this far, you can use it on any binary file. I'd have to work on recursive data structure calls, things like that. This was a very simple recursive call, but it's not really a recursive call. It's basically, I have some RGB values and I just repeat it X number of times. So this is all defined by the user. I don't have any definitions for Skyrim files yet or anything like that. And that's why that's one of the reasons I haven't released it, because there's still a lot of work to be done. But that being said, it's a single function that you basically say, this is the format of the data. I'm going to give these fields a name. I'm going to give these structures a name, and then that's all the application, that's all that particular function needs. It starts parsing the data out. It's slower than doing it other ways, but it's more universal. So one function will work for just about anything, and it's kind of future-proof in a way, because when Bethesda or any game company changes their data, you don't need to really recompile the application. You can just simply enter the changes in a text file, and you're good to go. Then I'll show you another example of a function here. So this do function basically puts whatever function I'm going to, it's basically going to add this function to that input pipe. So we're going to call it, this is the function, and it brings up that particular papyrus history. And again, these are all function calls. So almost every menu option you see, menu item you see, no matter what it is, even though these are definable by the user, are actually function calls that are sent down a pipe. And what that allows the user to do is literally configure this how they want. So if, for example, archiving game saves, there's a thing built in which you configure. You say, okay, I don't want no more than 10 game saves for a particular user, for a particular character's name. So this is Laura Martin. This is my new character. This is a protected file. This is where I actually mark this file as protected. This will never be archived off until I go in and I actually remove to unprotect the game save. So I have to unprotect it. Menus can be exclusive. They can be general. And you can have injected menus. So for example, this menu right here is a specific menu to this tab. And again, that's configurable. The tab has a name, and you configure the menu to that name. Other menus, like this one, use general menus. So general menus would be a menu that would be for every single one of these reports or forms. Um, However, the cool thing about menus is they are configurable. So it isn't just you can just say, I want to put copy selected and then call a function. You actually can put conditions on that particular menu option so it will only show up under certain conditions. And that's why it looks like the menus are changing. Because in this instance, this is a game save, so I would want to show game save information, game save options. That's configurable. There is also functions. There's also functions that you can pass down the menu pipe, which will then do certain things, such as if you take a look at select load order. See the load orders? This is actually a function that you specify in this menu, this particular menu item, and I'm telling it to show me all of the available load orders. So if I select one of these, it will actually bring that load order up. I can also do it like this. This calls a function which shows me load order history. I can also jump to it. I can open it, which is basically going to open it over here. I can do load order history if I want to take a look at it while I'm currently, I don't change my load order. I'm just looking at its specific history. And those are all function calls. And function calls can have parameters. So you literally can say, okay, I want to call this function and I want to pass this parameter to it. So when you click on this item here, and let's say I'm doing a resaver, I am passing the name of this game save to this particular function call, and this function call, which is a generic run, is running resaver. And that's pretty much all there is to it. So the idea was to simplify everything so you can customize this how you want it to be. You try to future-proof it to a certain degree, best you can. And you can add stuff to it. You can add your own menus like user tools. These are directly added. It'll try to find the icon, but in some cases it cannot. If you flat out declare it, like it's kind of hard to explain. But in some cases you can have an icon. In some cases you can't. But this is where I can add certain things to a specific menu. Certain applications I want to launch. I can create a report or a form that can act as a menu, and that can also do the same thing. And I'll show you an example of that. In reporting, one of the DLLs is a reporting DLL. And the only reason I set up a reporting DLL was so that it would, I'm trying to break the application out into little components. And this was my first attempt a while back to say, okay, I've got some reports that don't necessarily deal with anything in particular, and I need to have a framework for it, and that's what this is. So this, again, is just a list. But, and these are header items in the list. These are non-header items. That's why they look different. So this acts as a kind of like a menu. And I told it that it acts as a menu. So whenever you click one of these options, it says, okay, this item acts like a menu. What does the user want me to do? He wants me to run a function. So I can go in and I could take a look, for example, at application threads. So one of the libraries has its own threading routines. It's multi-threaded. You can have a bunch of them running. And this report simply shows you the thread name, and this is the function actually that the thread called, although it can have a text name or it can have a file name. It can be any name that you want. This just is just a simple report to show is the thread still running, how long did it take for the thread to run. And these right here, the 530s through like a 542, I think. 5142. I believe that block right there is what generates information for these tabs. And there's some cool things about threading. It's all custom code where you basically define your thread, and you call the function, and then it'll monitor your thread. It'll monitor it for it if it goes if it actually is unresponsive, and that's what I fire off when I'm playing the game. Playing the game calls a function, and that function starts the game, makes sure the game starts, and then records data about the game. And then when it's done, it updates the various tabs. That's when you see the little threads firing off. Because some functions actually are thread based. Some are direct, but most of them are thread based, and that way it doesn't halt what you're doing while it's kind of doing something long. Another example of that would be if I want to do a contained in. You can see that this thing is still running, but I can still move about and do whatever it is I want to do. That is thread based. So I define the thread for that function, fire it off, and it's just doing its thing. When it's done, it'll report back. And that's just this the whole. Okay, so again, back to the idea of sharing. So a lot of the data management has to do with managing databases. And one of the things this thing does, or one of the things I wanted it to do, that I need it to do, is to keep track of where certain things are. And this database is big. It's a flat file, so it's pretty bulky. SQL is coming. I don't have that in the application yet, but it is definitely coming. And it provides another layer of data management. There's multiple layers in here. There's multiple layers, so you can actually see that these are the archive files where that particular FOV slider ESL is located. You can see which one that I'm actually using, and because it knows these are archive files, I can actually take a look at it. I can take a look and see what that archive file is. So again, that's a function, and there's functions that are intrinsic, and then there's extrinsic, or intrinsic, and then is extrinsic a word? Yeah, I'm not really sure. But there's user definable functions, and that's what a lot of these are. So if I go over to, let's say, available, and I'm looking at precious metals. All right, so I'm going to show the files for precious metals. If I double click on, let's say, this copper bar, this is a user-defined event. So it's not complicated. You just basically say, I click on an item. The item is a NIF. What do you want me to do with it? And I say, well, what I want you to do is I want you to run NIF scope, and this is what you see. And it's the same for DDS. I want you to run, what is this puppy called? ifran view, which lets me view DDSs. So you literally can do this for any type of file based on its file extension, and that's pretty much it. So there's a lot of data here. There's a lot of work. It takes time, and a lot of the functions are buggy. Some of them I just threw together. It's kind of like, okay, I need to have a placeholder that I can come back to, so I can work. I know I want to do these particular steps. So step 3, I'm not even close to figuring out, but I want a placeholder there because I do know I want to do step 1, 2, and 3. So I'll throw some code in. It kind of works, but it definitely needs some additional refactoring. Okay, so that's kind of like that. Just wanted to share that with you so you can kind of see the scope of it. And to show you that it's not primarily data specific, and that is what's taking the incredible amount of time to get this thing done, and it's just a lot of data to go through. So I hope that kind of helps, and yeah, as soon as I get it done, you guys will be free to kind of play around with it and change it all you want.